Down here in Dayton, Ohio at the OP John Crawford. We are standing out in front of the Walmart right here, just across from the Fairfield Commons Mall. We got a group of people. A lot of them are leaving because it is raining, but we got Micah here from the Yellow Springs Cop Block chapter, and he is out today in open carry. We were going to do this, and then we declined, and I wanted to interview this guy because you know, this is the Second Amendment, right to the Constitution. We also have a right to open carry in Ohio. And so Micah agreed to do a short interview with us. I just got a couple questions, man. I just want to know, why are you here today?
I'm here because a great injustice occurred over at the Walmart in the pet food aisle. I was here with my son right after it happened when the parking lot got swarmed. We immediately pulled in over there because they had blocked off this parking lot right away, and we started interviewing people, asking them what had happened. What we heard from everybody was that there was a gunman. The gunman was shooting shoppers. I asked them, what the gunman look like? You know, is he at large? They said, yeah, he left the building. This is what everyone around here was saying when the melee ensued. I said, what's he look like? They said, I said, was he white or black? They said he was white.
Wow.
The gunman shooting shoppers was white. The gunman's name was Officer Sean Williams.
So the gunman was white.
The gunman, the only person who shot anyone in that store or who threatened to shoot anyone, we can see from the surveillance tape now, we had to fight and protest and demand and threaten to sue for them to even to release that tape. And Walmart was complicit with the police every step of the way. They helped the police. They refused to release the tape when the police said, don't release the tape. We don't want it to get out because if people see what happens when they're pissed off because this just happened, the streets are going to erupt in protest. So they tried to wait it out and let all of the anger dissipate, and then they finally released the tape, and we saw what happened. Nobody was freaking out about John Crawford. Nobody was saying, oh my God, there's a guy with a gun, and pulling their carts away. People were getting cat litter, and right in the same aisle with him. No one gave two squirts of piss about him being in there with what appeared to be a real assault rifle. And instead of prosecuting Officer Sean Williams, instead of prosecuting Ronald Ritchie, who admitted in an interview eventually that he lied, instead of doing that, the Beaver Creek Police has said it doesn't really matter. We'll make up the law as we go along. It doesn't matter that Ohio is a constitutional carry state. It doesn't matter that he didn't threaten anybody, that the gun was on the ground when Officer Sean Williams says he finally double tapped him towards center mass, and he only had 2 bullet wounds. So if he double tapped him, that means that happened when the gun was already on the ground, which was almost instantaneously. He tried to run away. This man was terrorized and then murdered by 2 law enforcement officers who did not enforce the law. They made up their own law. They wrote it in that store, and they've not been prosecuted.
I got to agree with you, man. That the video evidence is overwhelming. I mean, it says it all. It says it right there. The whole incident. This guy was absolutely no threat. The sad thing is that you know, when you got a 23-year-old kid out here, I start thinking about my daughter's 17. This kid was just starting his life, you know, and it was you know, drastically ended, and it's just very unfortunate. So yeah, man, great answer. Second thing is, what would you like to see done with the eventual outcome regarding John Crawford?
Well, it's become bigger now. John Crawford is almost an emblematic symbol of police abuse. Because it's just like in Ferguson, where it became bigger than Mike Brown, it became about the police response. We've had law enforcement officers threatening to arrest 14-year-old children for filming them at these protests. We've had 9-year-old children who are shopping, who the police were pushing to try to get them out of the mall. We've had a woman in a wheelchair who was pushed and threatened, and her husband was threatened for being present at the mall.
That was just like last week too, right?
This was just on Christmas Eve. We had a woman get run into in the pedestrian lane of this Walmart at a protest. The police SUV cruiser number 149 backed into her, and drove away, a hit and run.
Wow.
And Chief Evers refuses to issue even a citation to this law enforcement officer. We caught him driving away on video. We caught him hitting her on video.
Yeah, I'd like to see that video myself. I haven't seen that one yet.
He has refused. You can find these videos on countercurrentnews.com and alternativemediasyndicate.com. They both run different angles of it. But it is, it's proven that these guys are openly violating the law, and they're not being charged for it. What do we want? We want the police to not terrorize us when we're not breaking the law. We want them not to threaten to arrest our children and put them in cages for filming them. We would like to be able to exercise our constitutional rights of freedom of speech and the right of carrying a firearm, keep and bear arms,
yes.
Carry, bear. We would like to be able to do that without getting shot, without getting harassed. That's all we want. We want the police to
Second
not
Amendment
aggress.
right.
Yeah, don't aggress against us if we're not aggressing against you.
Yeah.
That's all we want. That's not a crazy demand.
That's what I believe too. You know, it's absolute police aggression against this man. I'm going to throw this in here as for another question, but because I brought this up with Christine on the last interview, but what is your stance on the 911 caller, Ronald Ritchie? Do you think that he should be prosecuted?
Ronald Ritchie has admitted that the term I believe he used was a prank, that this was somehow like a prank, it was a game. That's what he had to do eventually, because when he called up, he said all this bullshit about he was a Marine, which if you know anybody who was a Marine, you'll know he wasn't a Marine, because Marines always say they're a Marine for life, you know. The guy got booted out of basic training, he got booted out of boot camp, and he calls up and to argue that he should be listened to based on his credentials, he said he's a Marine. He says, and I know what a real gun is, and he was loading it. None of this happened. We have the whole thing on video. He made that up, and so once people called him on it in the mainstream media, he says, I was just kind of joking, it was a gag, it was a prank. And
turned out to be one big joke, huh?
He's admitted that he's broken the law. He's at least induced panic. He's at least, filed a false, I'm not sure how, if that would apply. But he's certainly committed a number of crimes in that 911 call. Chief Evers has refused to prosecute him. The city of Beaver Creek has refused to prosecute him. And we have been trying to get a hold at Yellow Springs Cop Block and Dayton Cop Block. Members of the media, Greene County Herald, Countercurrent News, Alternative Media Syndicate, have all been trying to get a hold of Chief Evers, who before had come up to us and tried to be buddy-buddy and say, hey guys, how's it going? We just want people to be peaceful and everything's cool. And he will not return our phone calls about these illegal acts of aggression by his officers, even against elementary school-aged children. So yes, absolutely, Ronald Ritchie needs to be arrested. And in the future, there will be protests at Ronald Ritchie's house. Deleting your Facebook is not going to keep us away. We already have your address. We will protest outside of your house peacefully and legally on public property. And the same goes for you as well, Officer Sean Williams. Just because we haven't showed up yet does not mean we don't have your address. We know that you're right down this street, right off of there, and twist right around your little twisty roads to your house. We know exactly where you live. And there's not a threat. That's a promise. We will be there protesting legally and peacefully, because if we don't have peace in the streets and in the aisles of Walmart, you're not going to have peace either.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, man. That just takes us right into the last thing. We're just kind of going, to that path here with this question is, what is your standpoint about police who commit crimes and are granted immunity in a court of law?
They're criminals. They're criminals. And there's criminals who are allowing them to stay in uniform and allowing them to remain armed and giving them that little badge. They're all criminals. They're all complicit in these crimes. As long as there is any sort of state, a federal state, the only use for it whatsoever should be to go after, on a federal level, people like this, the individual local corrupt. This is Greene County. We have a history of corrupt police chiefs.
I've heard that. I've heard that from several people in this area. I used to be a resident in Vandalia, and I've heard lots of horrifying stories about the police in Greene County. And not only that, but I've also heard about the sentences that the judges passed down to people and put them in jail for victimless crimes and lock them up for 180 days. I've heard it numerous occasions from different people who have you know been involved in their court system. So just wrapping up here, do you think that the prosecutors, what do you think is a viable solution as far as if these prosecutors are not willing to even bother to indict these officers, not only here in Dayton or you know, Greene County, but across the nation? If the prosecutors aren't willing to step up and say, hey, look, this guy is going to be held accountable for his crime. We are going to hold him to the same standard of justice as the rest of, you know, the nation. What is a viable solution if we can't get these prosecutors to do this? Well, I mean, in your opinion, what do you think?
My approach is always to try multiple areas of attack. That means opening investigations with the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Department of Justice?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. People like me who had elementary school age children who were pushed by these law enforcement officers. The woman who you met who was in the wheelchair, you know, who you were talking to.
Yep,
these people can file, people who were actually aggressed against by the police can file with the FBI, and that's what should be done. That's number one. Contact the state attorney general. That's number two. Sue. Because you know what? Even
when you're all done suing, sue again.
Yeah, if you don't get the money, if you don't get what it doesn't matter. They don't like getting sued. Nobody likes getting sued. So if they do things that are illegal, they need to be sued. If we can't prosecute them criminally, we can try to get the federal government to prosecute them criminally. If they don't, it's at least pissed in their Wheaties for a little bit. You know, they don't like having the FBI breathing down their throats. They know what the FBI thinks about them. The FBI doesn't like them. The FBI thinks of them the way we think of mall security, and they know it. And they resent them for it.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
Yeah, they think they're a joke. But they don't cooperate with these federal investigations. So if the FBI is watching this, FBI, if you are interested in justice, you need to prosecute these police officers when they refuse to cooperate with your federal investigations, because they're committing crimes. You can't just blow this off. You need to read the Tao Te Ching. You need to read Sun Tzu's Art of War. You need to look at the rise and fall of nations and see what happens when you don't stop people from these abuses, because our nation is coming apart at the seams right now because of the refusal to prosecute these criminal cops. And if we want a future for this country, if we want there to be an America in 100 years, they're gonna have to do their jobs. The FBI is gonna have to do their jobs, the Department of Justice, and lock these criminal cops up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Micah, man, great answers. Good to see you, man. Great to finally meet you. It is raining. I think everybody's
I think we're getting out of here.
We're gonna all head out of here, man. So we're signing out here, Lima, Allen County. This is Mike Freeman, and thank you once again, Mike.